Hello, everyone. I really, really need to get that to end at a perfect time that it's not so awkward, but it's okay. Hey, everyone. I'm glad to see people are already in the chat saying hello. If this is your first time watching, this is Open Source Friday, and it's basically a Twitch stream where every Friday I chat with an open source maintainer about their project or a core contributor, so we can learn more about like different open source projects that we can contribute to, and who we can support and help the open source maintainer get a bit more exposure. This month, I've been focusing heavily on featuring Black maintainers because it's Black History Month, and yeah, I'm like, let's make sure we get Black maintainers their shine. Today we have Brandon with us, and I will let Brandon introduce himself.
Hey, thanks for first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Much appreciated. For those who don't know, I'm Brandon Roberts. I give the spiel. I'm Brandon T. Roberts on Twitter, so you can follow me there. I am an open source maintainer. I am a senior software engineer at OpenSauce, which we're helping people find open source projects to contribute to also, and also insights into open source projects. So definitely check that out. But I do a lot of work in the Angular community, and maintain a couple of projects. One of them is NgRx, which is a set of reactive libraries for building Angular applications. And then another one that we'll talk about today, which is Analog.
Nice. And I really admire all the work you do in open source. Like you are dedicated. I just want to say that. I'll also say hi to like a couple of people in the chat that I normally see. So
Hmm.
hey to this user, and then I see Ernest in here as my coworker, and then also hey to Christine as well, and everybody else that said hello. Hi from like wherever you're calling in from. Someone said hi from Texas. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
chat's really active already. That's pretty cool.
I know, I'm excited about that. I think people are excited to see what project you're gonna show.
Hmm.
So next question is, what is your project? I know you said it's you're gonna talk about it, but tell us a little
Yep.
bit more about what it is and what it does.
Yeah, so Analog is a full stack meta framework for Angular. And if you're, well, if we're talking about meta frameworks, it's if you think of Next.js, if you think of Nuxt or SvelteKit, it's similar to those. There are many others, of course,
Yeah.
in that space. I think you could put Astro in that space also.
Yeah.
But this one is built around Angular, and Angular is a framework itself. So Analog kind of takes that next step and builds some things on top of Angular that doesn't necessarily do out of the box. Kind of enhances the experience there. So gives Angular like a foot into that space of meta frameworks that seem to be really popular these days.
Yes, love that. And then maybe for people who are like really beginner developers,
Hmm.
what would you describe a meta framework? Now, this is my first time even trying to figure out how I would describe it. A
Yeah.
framework of a framework? Would you say it's like that or
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to borrow a definition from Ben Holmes, who works at the Astro team. He said a meta framework is something that stitches multiple frameworks together. So, in this case, Angular is a framework and it has multiple pieces also. So we're working to kind of stitch some of those pieces together into a package that works on top of that. It still uses like regular Angular APIs and things under the hood, but kind of gives glues some of those things together that, like I said, Angular doesn't do. Like the things that most meta frameworks do these days is like file-based routing
Hmm.
and maybe server-side rendering and static site generation and things like that. So those are considered. I consider those to be table stakes for like a meta framework, and analog is goals is to have those features also.
Nice. What inspired you to create this project? Also, I don't know anything much about the Angular world, so if I ask a dumb question, sorry.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, the inspiration of the project was that, but like I said, there are a lot of players in the space already. Like basically, I would say most other web frameworks ecosystems have a meta framework. Like React has Next.js and Remix, and the list goes on. Gatsby, I consider it to be a meta framework also for React. Like I said, Svelte has SvelteKit, and Vue has Nuxt, and Astro is, like I said, a meta framework in itself. And a lot of these are built on top of Vite as their like underlying build tool. And for people who may not know what Vite is like a front end build tool that helps developers really build applications faster. It's like I think it's next generation front end tooling, maybe what they have on the homepage. But a lot of the web frameworks are kind of taking that and building these meta frameworks on top of Vite. So, like I said, these other ecosystems have something in place there, and my motivation was I talked about it for a while, even before I like try to actually dive into creating one for Angular, just because people like expect Angular to have so much out of the box already, just because it is a framework and all that. So
Yeah.
I wanted to like take that a little step further and create some nice things out of the box in addition to that.
I love that. So basically, you were like, all these other frameworks have
Yeah.
really good meta frameworks, and Angular's kind of might be
Yeah,
lacking
Angular
behind.
Angular has yeah Angular has traditionally been known to be like left out on the island
Yeah.
and kind of doing our own thing, and then kind of the rest of the web kind of moves along, I think, at a different pace, just because of how some of how that's just how Angular works, because it's used a lot of enterprise environments, and they're not as quick to change and shift things around. So yeah, I wanted to. I kind of think of it as like analog is like Angular, kind of Angular outside of Google per se, because
Mm.
it moves like it kind of moves with the web ecosystem, and the rest of the web ecosystem is kind of moving along with Vite right now. So, like I said, I wanted to have a solution there, something in place to see if it was possible, and kind of build on that and keep moving that forward in that way.
Okay. And before we get into the demo, I just had this random question pop in my head. When did you make Analog? Like, did you start
I
it a while ago or recently?
Yeah, it's been pretty recent. I started it, well, I like officially started it probably about 6 or 7 months ago.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was when I got past the point of, am I going to do this, to yes, I'm going to actually try to start another open source project. And I mentioned earlier about NgRx, which is a project that a lot of people rely on. So I didn't want to abandon that one, but I feel like I had waited enough time to, instead of talking about this project and try to get something together, to try to get the project off the ground. So yeah, I think it's been about 6 or 7 months now from beginning to like where we are now.
okay. Wow, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm impressed by how many open source projects you're able to maintain. I started doing one, and I feel like I only do like one issue a week. I'm like, I don't know how people do that. But let's jump into your demo. I'm really excited to see what you have to show.
Yeah, sure. So this We'll start with a pretty simple project here. I just created a new analog project, and if you want to, of course, you can start create your own analog project. If you go to analog.js.org, we can add that in the notes. But I've generated a new project, and I'll just run npm start here, and we'll let that come up there. So what, like if we talk about how Angular projects work today, normally they're built around Webpack, but like I said, this is built around Vite. And I'll just bring up the docs here, and it just shows some of the features that Analog has, Vite powered. It's got the big Angular logo in the middle, and then the Analog project there on the other side there.
Gotcha.
So I'll go back to here, and I'll open this up in a new tab here, and go to localhost 5173. If I can type, there we
Better
go.
than me. Okay.
So, so this is just after you create a new project and run npm start. This is just the first screen that pops up here. It's just pretty standard. We show a counter. This is just show like this is Angular and Vite working together in an analog itself. So that's what you get out of the box. And if we go back into the project here, we can kind of look at some of the files here. I mean, text a little bigger there. But it looks like a pretty standard Angular project. And you say you weren't that familiar with Angular, so I will go over some of the newer things in Angular, and then kind of go into show some of the other things there. So Angular is pretty standard as far as like other frameworks, as far as using components to drive the UI. So Angular has its notion of components. These things here, we have a selector here that just tells you where to put the component on the page. The
Oh,
standalone thing here is pretty new, where Angular has really like slimmed down the experience of creating a component in Angular, so you can actually define what the component depends on, and it uses standalone flag to denote that. So,
okay.
and then we have our imports here, and this just tells you what this component has access to in the template here, which is this router outlet here, and that's just where the routes go once we define them using the file system.
Okay.
So if I go into, and then you can have inline styles here,
Okay.
which those are automatically like scoped to the component itself. But Angular is known a lot for giving you a lot of structure out of the box. So what Analog does on top of this is we have this routes folder, and I have an index file here, and it shows the things that I showed on the homepage here. There's Vite plus Angular, and the
Oh yeah,
logos
the
here.
logos. Yeah.
Yeah, so all this is just our like home route. So if I go in and I take this, and I can just go in and delete all this and say, we'll call this, we'll just scroll back up here.
Okay.
We'll just call this Open Source Friday, and save that. And
Do
we
that.
just send that just updates our route there. So like I said, traditionally we have file-based routing. So I just define this routes file here that will, this path will give us a new route at just slash. So if I go in
Oh,
here and I want to create another route, I can create, it's usually my go-to in about.ts, and I can create another component in this class, and we'll just name this one about analog, and I'll say analog is a meta framework for Angular. And I got a lot of autocomplete here going on here also. And I'm going to export that default class as an about component.
oh, okay.
So what I can do is I may have to restart the file here, but yeah, I'll just go into Vite here,
And reload the page.
and yeah, just restart it there, and this will give me a should give me a new route. So we have our home route, and then we go to our about page there, and it may be showing up here. Let me make sure I got everything right here. About default, about components,
Hmm.
index route, and it was still showing the old one, of course. So let's see if I have my port right here.
Oh, good. Love to see debugging. And I've every time I've streamed myself coding, nothing like ever works. I'm always like,
Yeah,
why me?
yeah. If it's yeah, of course. Once you get on the stream here, everything tends to have a mind of its own.
Yeah.
And but you can also, if I may need to switch here, but
Okay. Go for it.
let's see. Let's stop that, and then we'll run that again and see if it. Of course, it wants to do what it wants to do. But I will show. I'll open up a Stack Blitz here and let that get running. Also, maybe
Okay.
it'll be a little different on, not on my machine, but
On a remote machine.
yeah,
I'm
we'll see
rich.
if Stack Blitz comes up here. But yeah, one that I wanted to say was I can go through and open up another project here also that has some routes in it, just to kind of give a walkthrough. And
Yeah.
people don't want to see code, but we can show. I have, this is just the analog repo itself, so we can look at some of the my usually my go-to is the blog app, where you can, one of the features of analog is you can use it to build a blog and have some of those extra things there. So
Ooh.
we'll see. Okay, so we got this one coming up here in Stack Blitz, and we'll try go in here and create a route here also. Name this about.ts, and we'll create a component.
From what you're showing, this does feel like Next.js for Angular. Cause like you're saying
Yes.
analog made the like routes way easier to handle in Angular. I don't know how they're like handled regularly, but this looks cool.
Yeah, that's the goal of one, at least one of the goals is to have something there. Export.
Pika Boo Boo on YouTube said the about component does not have a selector. Is that what was missing? Or no?
It doesn't. I'll add
Mhm.
I'll add one, but it shouldn't need one. But we'll add one anyway. Selector. Always good to get some help from the from the audience here. So let's go back in here and we'll try it. I'll open a new window and we'll go back to Open Source Friday. And we have our template here. So I'll add a selector and we'll name this app.about. And let's see. Let's see if we can run yarn dev here and see if that runs, starts it up any quicker there. So I'll go ahead and save that. And we'll go back to here. And we're still showing, yeah, it seems like it's still showing the, like I know I changed that template. So I'm wondering, of course, wondering why it's not wanting to reload that there. So, okay, Open Source Friday.
Okay.
So let's go back to the about route again.
Okay.
And we'll see. Oh, I think I know what I did here.
Okay. Yeah, we found
Okay.
out.
So this is the thing that always trips me up. If we add standalone true, that just means that this component can basically stand on its own.
Oh, okay.
So yes, so
There
now
it
we
was.
have, there we go. About analog is a meta framework for Angular. We'll make this a little bit better so people can see it
Nice.
and at least show the refresh working. So there we go. So I went through that in a roundabout way, of course, but we got to the point where you could just define a route and that define a route as a component, and then that just becomes a route that you can use in your application there. So that is the file-based routing part. And another feature of Analog is API routes. So if I go into this server folder here, which I've generated one that goes along with the application itself, and this is just a route that says "Hello World," but this just comes pre-configured out of the box. So if I go to API slash hello, or did I? Let's see if I put that right there. Can I find any matching route? Of course. Okay, I put route slash v1 slash
You
hello.
totally got to do V1.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I usually prefix that with v1 just because that's usually how APIs
Oh,
go. So we
yeah.
have our API route there that's just hello world. And we'll say hello Brazil.
Hey.
And then we
Cool.
can see that that just kind of that just works with auto reloading and everything else. So, and I did see someone ask in the chat if it would break how components work today. And the good news is that all this works with existing components. So you don't have to. You can still build your Angular app how you would normally build it with components and services and everything else, and still get that nice experience there, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And I think more context to what Czech Tech was saying when he said, but I would suppose it would break old components.
Hmm.
Um, they were asking, like, I guess saying, like, why isn't standalone true default? And maybe
Yes.
you took a technical decision that made sense here for that. Yeah.
Yeah, for the file-based routing part, I'm using standalone out of the box here. But if you, and that's just because I think I'm kind of looking forward into the future of where Angular is today, and then where it's going to be if and when standalone becomes the default. So as far as the routing goes, if you're starting with a new application today, I would say go with standalone components because they're stable and everything else. And then, like I said, analog fits into that for the routing side of things. And all this is like powered by the Angular router under the hood. So we're not making you use like a whole different stack altogether. We're just providing some more developer experience on top of Angular, what Angular provides today.
This was awesome. It's really cool that you built this. Um, I'm curious. Wait, is your demo done? I don't want to
Oh no,
interrupt.
you can go ahead. We can get more into it.
Oh, because I'm just curious, like, what even goes into like building a framework? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot. And the good part about it is, like I said, I'm building on top of, well, not just me, because a lot of people have contributed to this project also, but I'm building on top of something that like already has some sort of structure, already has the components and things in place there. So I am adding like a layer, like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I think that's probably the usual term that we go with as far as being able to build some of these things on top of that. So, like the routing is there, the components are there, but I did have to like do a lot of research into how this would work and how we could bring these things together and kind of build on top of Vite itself because Vite has a slightly different model as far as compiling your application goes, but Vite is flexible enough to fit within many different environments. So putting it together was I had to learn a lot about how Vite works and kind of dig into some of the more parts about how Angular works also. And if you get into things like server side rendering
Yeah.
and how to integrate those things together. So part of it is learning how to glue things together, and then the other part of that, of course, is polish and wanting people to try it out and give you more feedback to kind of smooth out the experience out of the box. So,
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for answering. I'll stop interrupting with questions. I
oh,
was
no
just like
problem.
impressed.
Yeah, so yeah, those were the couple of the things that I talked about was the uh, the file-based routing and then the API routes, and another part is the server-side rendering,
Ooh.
and I'll uh, look at that also because Angular does have a something in place that's similar. That's called Angular Universal, but it's like a separate project that you have to add to your existing Angular project to get that functionality. But in this case, like I said, I wanted to kind of integrate those things together. So in order to enable server-side rendering, I can go into this Vite config here, and I can go in here and add SSR true to the project, and
Oh.
I will go ahead and if I think it restarts already, but um, now we can go back into the project itself. And normally, what if you're doing server side rendering, you would get, of course, you have to render the HTML and then the project, and then kind of the Angular side takes over, and then
Mhm.
kind of brings in your client side JavaScript. So uh, what this does is let you render the page on the server, and then hydrate it in the client there. So
Oh.
if we go into here and disable JavaScript, and we come back to this page, we can see that the page is still rendering and everything is already there. But we have the server side rendering in place so that you'll still get something on the page even if for some reason JavaScript is turned off. Now, of course, most projects are using JavaScript these days, so you can enable that. But for SEO, and if you're, like I said, if you're building something like a blog with Angular or Analog, then you'll get that nice pre-rendered HTML page before your client side code comes in. So,
That's
which, like I said,
awesome.
good for SEO and building static sites. Helps you build a static site with Analog and Angular easier in that way. If and it and part of that is just wanting to have something for like I said, the Angular community to build with that also. Have been other projects that have done something similar. There's another project called Scully, which is a kind of like a static site generator for Angular, which is similar, but this kind of takes a different approach in doing and kind of grouping everything together into one project. So that was the server side rendering part, and like I
That's
said,
really cool.
you could use that in many different ways there.
Yeah, I love that part, especially since it was so easy. You just had to like change the flag to
Mm-hmm.
say true rather than what you said earlier. It's like you'd have to import a whole new project and do all this stuff.
Yep.
Even somebody said it's really an excellent project, especially the SSR and SG and file based rounding.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted the like I said, I've seen Next.js, I've used it, I've used some of these other projects, but I wanted of course, wanted the experience of building with Angular to have that same experience of you don't have to necessarily know how the all the routing works up front. It just kind of works. You don't necessarily have to wire up all the SSR and all that. You can flip a flag and it kind of works. So that, like I said, those are we're still working on like polishing out the things and everything else, but still like I said, wanted to have that experience out of the box there.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think the way that you've packaged it up is great. Check Tech said like I tried Scully, but analog is looking better.
Yeah, I wanted to, I when I was like I said, part of the feature set that I wanted to create the experience was some of the bit of Scully, some of the bit of Angular Universal, kind of nice in a nice integration together. So did want to give credit to those projects because they have kind of paved some of the way for here. But there, I wanted to, like I said, took a different approach and created a little more integration there.
Yeah, yeah. Like shout out to Scully because they kind of helped to give the inspiration and lay
Yep.
the foundation for how you could do this. Someone asked, "How could we create a post API route?"
Yeah. So one of the nice things about Analog is that it uses a project called Nitro under the hood. So Nitro itself is a similar project that powers Nuxt, and it
Oh,
provides API routes, and we're using that same kind of stack underneath. So if I wanted to do a post route, I could create like data.post.ts,
oh,
and I could add a handler. Well, I don't want to put that in here. I go into the server routes and move that in here. Yes, changes. No. So I'll just take this one and copy the event handler in here, and we'll name this one hello post. So I could use this. We could go to /v1/data, like send a post request to that endpoint, and it
Mm,
would handle it like a post request. So it does have support for get and post requests out of the box. And like I said, that was some of the, and that, like I said, I didn't have, and that, the great part about it is I didn't have to like build all that from scratch. That was one of the pieces that I had to integrate in, or did have
mhm.
to figure out how to integrate it in together. But it gives you a lot of, I didn't have to like use another whole 6 months to try to figure out how to do that part, how to integrate it in, and everything else. So I wanted to get something up and running pretty quickly, and it was one of those things that was available.
Nice. Okay, so that was part of the gluing in that
Yes.
you did. A lot of people are asking like, where's the link? I can't post links in the chat because GitHub has it disabled. It'll turn into little stars. But
Yeah.
right here, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is on the screen though, like github.com/analog.js/analog. That's the GitHub repo.
Yep. That's the GitHub repo, and I think somebody posted it. Analog.js.org
Oh,
is also the website that you can go to, which yep. Yep, that's the link there. And this will take you to the docs page, like I said, where you can open it up in Stack Blitz and read through the documentation about the different features, some of which I covered in the demo as far as file-based routing and API routes and the server-side rendering part. And it also has another feature that's kind of out there that's an integration with Astro. So if you
ooh,
wanted to use the Astro, because I know I've seen Astro or I saw the episode with Nate from the Astro team, Nate Moore from the Astro team on here before, and Analog has a package too. If you want to use Angular components within Astro, you can do that too. So, kind of build. I'm kind of building bridges here and there. I'm kind of building the bridge to the Meta framework, building bridges to like other ecosystems, which is like I said, part of the goal of Analog as a project.
that was smart of you. And yeah, like I'm obsessed with Astro. I think I've had them on Open Source Friday like 3 times already. I'm like, what's
Yeah,
coming out with?
yeah, big shout out to the Astro team. They were different. They were definitely supportive when I showed off the integration of using Angular components in Astro, and other people are taking advantage of that too, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. We have a couple questions that I'm going to highlight, but also you had to open in Stack Bliss. What about opening GitHub code spaces?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're definitely right there. I have to add another button there for integration there, but there's definitely something to look at also.
Yeah, I can try to help with that. I'm trying to get that for Astro, so we can see what can happen in the future. Um, the user stupid learner said, is there a possibility to do some sort of dynamic route that depends on some logic?
Yeah. So the normal or the most common one is there are different ways you can define routes. So like these are just static routes that I've created. But if
Right.
I wanted to say, I'll go ahead and create a new file, and we'll just name this one blog dot slug dot ts. So the slug is dynamic. The slug can be dynamic. So I'm going to go in here and copy this, and we'll say ID, and we'll name this one post. So the ID is comes from the will come from the URL after after we register the route, but we can get the route using the inject function in
Oh,
Angular, and we can inject the route information for that particular thing. So if I inject this route, and I'm going to get the param, well, I'll get the snapshot, and then I'll get the param map,
okay.
and it's just going to say get slug, and it's just going to give me the ID that I navigate to when I go to this URL.
Okay.
So I'm going to rename this to ID,
Mm.
and then I'm just going to display ID here. So if I did all that, and our route is there. So if I go back here, and we'll see if I have to restart or not. Um, and we'll name this as blog one there. So let's see.
Might have to restart because what we're expecting to render is the number one, right? In the H.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
this is
And
cool.
I'm just gonna disable that just so we have at least a baseline of what we need to do.
Yeah.
So just reload that. And let's see. If we go back to home, we have Open Source Friday. Go to blog/1, and we have our
Oh.
ID there. So you can create like dynamic pages based on those things. So if I add two here, it'll just render that'll be just the ID if you wanted to render a blog post or render like this my first post, which is something people usually do. So you could use that to go fetch some content, or even if you wanted to use kind of use analogs like internal I'll call it internal content routes to make pages like that also. So you can have dynamic pages and static pages there. If I wanted to do, and another one I'll go ahead and show here is like using a markdown as a route.
Oh.
So if we come in here and say hello chat, and we'll see if I have to I'll go ahead and preemptively
Just in case.
restart here just in case. So we have our route here. And if I go to /hello, oh yeah, I have to add a couple more things to enable the markdown rendering. So if I go into my main file here, and this is part of like of the content routes I was mentioning earlier. So if I go into provide content, and we're going to import that from provide content from Analog.js /content. And we're also going to use the with markdown renderer, which is just a feature of
Cool.
that. So if you save that
See what happens.
and reload our page, we get Open Source Friday. And I think I named that hello. And we got hello
Oh.
chat. So that's just another, like I said, another feature. And people, of course, people like to use this for blogs. If you want to use Markdown as a route instead of having to create like a whole TypeScript file and everything else. So just another, like I said, another nicety that you can use if you want to create some content pretty easily, or and then have maybe an application side of that also.
That was really cool to see. Yeah, this is awesome. Like if you did want to create a blog, I could see how like quick and easy that would be. Very snappy. Somebody said,
Yep.
is it production ready?
Yeah, I would say it depends. If you
Okay.
want to use it, I think like if you're using it for a blog or like some small content site, I would say yes. I've been like using it as I've been throwing it as many things as possible, but I definitely want more people to use it and give us feedback, give me feedback on about what works and what doesn't. Just because I know there are people out there that are using it, and people are like building blogs with it and things like that. So but yes, the things that, like I said, Angular is stable. The a lot of the pieces around it are already stable. So before I would consider it to be, it's not at a 1.0 yet. So if that's what your metric is, then I wouldn't consider it production ready. But it is available to use today and to get ready, get started, and get going with.
Yeah, after all, you only made it like 6 or 7 months ago,
Yeah.
or only like really started.
I'd
So
have to be some kind of wizard to go to 1.0 and production enterprise ready
yeah,
in 6 months. So still work in progress, but coming along.
yeah, and chat definitely try out the project, help it get to that point where
Yep.
it's like, yeah, definitely we know that this really cool big company is using it. Um, but we do have like some awesome comments. Someone said this is a big advantage for content.
Hmm.
Someone else said Analog.js looks amazing. Thanks for the great job. Someone
Yeah,
else
much
said,
appreciated.
yeah. Someone said bridging. I'm sorry, I can't even read. Bridges linking communities. I think that's when you
Yep.
mentioned like going from or connecting with Astro.
Hmm.
We had a couple, one more, well, not one more, but a few more. Someone said when turning on SSR, all the pages will be server side rendered. Is there a way to use SSR for only a specified page?
Yes, there is, and to configure that, you'd have to look more. This is more, I would say, more of an advanced feature because it does support that. But uh, you can pre-render certain pages, or like if I wanted only want to pre-render certain pages, I could go into because you're still going to get the client-side app either way.
Mm.
But there is a feature in Analog where you can go into the config and you can configure which routes you want to pre-render. So if I go into pre-render and I choose routes, and I could just provide this an array of routes. So
Oh, gotcha.
if I say hello or just the home route or slash about, then it will pre-render those pages, and then the rest of it will be can be server side rendered. But one advanced feature, as I mentioned about Nitro underneath, is that it lets you set up certain rules where you can disable the server side rendering for particular pages. But that is an advanced feature that you would have to configure like in the Nitro config. But I will show that we do give you access to like the underlying Nitro features. So if you want to dig into the like the more advanced parts of it, we kind of pass that configuration along, and you can configure that part too.
That's cool. Perfect. Um, I don't know if I understand this next question, so let me know if um I don't know. But they basically said, is it possible to convert any of the components to other languages?
Convert them to other languages. Not that I'm aware of. That would take more work than that would take more work than what the goal of analog
Yeah.
is. So I think that's a different target. We're still targeting like the web, and but it does, like I said, it does allow you to use Angular components in other environments that support Vite. So that's one plus there. But if you're talking about a completely different language like Rust, that I think that's a little too far out of the goal of this project. So yeah.
Yeah. And then last question, they're asking about hot reload. Is that coming in the future? Does it already exist?
Oh, okay. It is on the list of features that I would like to have, and I guess if they're talking about like HMR, that is one of the big features of Vite, and we would like to support that in the future. But today we're still getting the caching and everything, but HMR is not enabled by default, just because we want to make sure everything else is ironed out first.
Nice. Love it. And I'll end with like some positive comments. Someone said, I really see the emphasis on usability in this project. It's so wonderful to see this degree of focus on developer experience. And then they also said, hats off to everybody who worked on this to get so much done in half a year's time.
Yeah,
Um,
much appreciated. Like I said, there have been a lot of people who have contributed. I'll give them a plug also while we got the docs up here. If we go to the contributors page, of course, you can see my face right there. But we also have a bunch of other people that have contributed to the project also. And we're also always looking for more people to contribute there. Or if you want to sponsor the project, hey, you can throw a few bucks at the project too. So all those things help out the project.
yes. And that's a good segue then into how can people contribute to this project if they were interested?
Yeah, so the best way to contribute is you can go to the GitHub repo
Mm.
and look at the some of the open issues, or try to do a better job about showing good first issue. So if I have labels on there, it'll be a good first issue, or be one that says like accepting PRs. I don't think I have any there. Well, like this one is
Right now.
one that's accepting PRs, and somebody's already Marco, who's a friend of mine, who has contributed to the project also, has already said that they would work on that one. But like I said, most of the things that other people have contributed have been like issues that have been open, and then they would say that they'll be willing to work on it. So that's kind of where the how we tackle issues there when I'm not like actively labeling them. So yeah, you can pick up an issue, whether it be docs, code, uh, it can be whatever you want to contribute. We have issues available for people to use, and I can kind of use the all contributors as an example of that, where you can see where people have done design work, code, docs, just a little bit of everything. So definitely more to be done there.
Love it. All right. And then my other these are less technical questions now, and
Yep.
within, I guess we have like about 10 more minutes left, is like it's really exciting to see that you have so many contributors already, and I see some familiar faces. Do you have any advice for people who are like starting a project or they're maintaining a project? How are you able to gain contributors and sponsors and users for your project?
Yeah, like for me, it's like part of it is, of course, you have to like get the project off the ground, but a lot of it is showing people the project, seeing if people are interested in what you're doing, like setting up the contributing contributor docs and things like that in the GitHub repo was definitely helpful there. Like I tried to do all those things, like working on a project already, like NgRx, which has a large community around it. I was kind of able to take some of those things and apply them here. So it's like setting up contributor docs, like uh, templates for if people want to submit. If it, like in our issues, I specifically say if you would like to, submit a pull request, then we'll help you with that if you would like to,
Oh, that's
just to
nice.
try to encourage people to, or at least like bring the level the bring the level of friction down for people who want to contribute also. And then
Yeah.
like I set up a Discord for the project and everything, invite people there. So part of it is like trying to build a community around the project, and then of course people who are excited about it will kind of share that information also. I saw someone just post this morning that they wrote a blog post on Analog and Tailwind with
Oh,
dark mode, and I thought that was pretty cool. So part of it is like trying to get the project off the ground, and then uh, especially when people file issues, I think that's probably a good way to interact with people who are, because they've already shown some interest in wanting and filing the issue. So if they are willing to take that next step and want to open a PR, then I'm always try to be willing and available to help them in that way.
I love that. So it kind of sounds like putting in place like good documentation so people can navigate the project, having those places where people can chat with you, like a Discord, and then like also showing like, hey, if you open an issue or pull request, I'm ready to help you, and then telling people about it, like, and
Hmm.
whatever other communities you have, like that's important. You can't just have a project and nobody knows about it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. Because I was asking on Twitter the other day what are some of people's favorite Angular open source projects, and people started throwing projects out there, and it's like I've never heard of this project, and I'm sure they've done a lot of work on the project. And it's not not to say anything about the project, but you do have to kind of, if you want people to notice it, you do have to kind of put it out there
yeah.
and show that you're working on this thing and talk about it so that it'll be at least in people's mind, or if they think about like wanting to build a new project, maybe they'll take a look at yours or kind of use it in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like you said, once you start getting users, they might start talking about it for you. Like how you
Hmm.
said someone made a blog post about, did you say analog and tailwind? Is that
Yeah,
right?
analog. Yeah, analog and tailwind. Yep.
Cool. All right. Um, for you, what has been like the most challenging part of maintaining a project and then the most rewarding? I think I've talked to you about this on like a different Twitter space. But
Yeah. So the most challenging part about it is uh, most of the time you have to do open source projects on like free night or evenings and weekends.
Mhm.
So, but and that's just you don't have enough time to do everything that you want to do. So that's probably the most challenging part. I've been fortunate enough to, for as far as like contributors and things, that most of the people who have contributed to the project or talked about it have been positive about it. So that sometimes the challenge is when somebody says something bad about your project and you wonder if if you still want to work on it. So
Yeah.
that's probably one of the challenges. But the most rewarding part, like I said, is the other side of that, where me for working in open source has like opened up a lot of doors for me as far as jobs and people that I've been able to meet and places I've been able to go through open source. So it definitely has been, like I said, it's been a game changer for me as far as where I was before I started like really investing in open source and making that a part of like what I wanted to do for a career. So that's been the most rewarding part for me.
That's awesome. I agree. I'm like, open source has a really big impact on careers. Like now you get to work at open source, which I think is
Hmm.
kind of cool. And then even like I posted in like the GitHub channel. or the GitHub Slack that I was gonna have you on Twitch, and people were like, "Oh, Brandon's awesome!" I'm like, "You're famous."
Hey, I really appreciate that. I try to do what I can.
Nice, yeah. Okay, let me see what else. Oh, my question that I've been asking this month is like, what are your thoughts on improving diversity within open source?
Hmm.
Because like when I took over Open Source Friday, I was like, I'm gonna have all the Black maintainers, all and I'm like, oh my god, it's kind of hard to find them because
Yeah, that is true. I went to a conference last year, Refactor Tech, and I was sitting at a table with like a table full of like black engineers, and I talked about like what I've been doing in open source, and then one of the other engineers looked at me and said, "You're like the first black person I know." And this person that worked, I think they were working at Microsoft. They said, "I've been working at Microsoft 20 years, and like you're the first person I know that's like done open source like that out in the open."
wow,
And
that's crazy.
it kind of struck me when they said that, because like, of course, like, because I've been in it for a while, like open source is available for anyone, but there is a lot of things that even in the black community that we have to do that, and like open source is like the last thing on that list. It's like got to take care of your family, you got to
Yes,
work and things like that. So in order to create more diversity in open source, I think we have to have more avenues to where people can work on it as part of what they do, instead of
mm,
it being like an extra thing. Like, I'm working on it. I get to do open source, at Open Source, which is great for me, but a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And I think we have to, jobs have to create more opportunities for that, so that we can have people who are, black people specifically, who can work on open source, and it not take away from like them having to choose that over their job or anything like that. So, whether it be have some time to do that as part of their job, or some sort of, if they can do it and it not like hurt them like at their job. I think those are things that we could improve on as far as companies go, because like open source is changing like the landscape of how people find jobs these days. And
yeah,
if you're, I would say, if you're like black and you're doing open source and things like that, I feel like you're a unicorn. I feel
yeah,
like you stand out more in a group if you're doing that on top of the other things that you would do when you're like looking for jobs and things. So if I could tell a black person to start contributing open source, I can show they can look at me and see that is impacted me. So hopefully, I can help others get provide some impact in that way too.
yes, do it, y'all. If you're Black and watching, definitely try to find a way to make time. But I understand, like you said, it's not really open source already is not really sustainable. Like there's not a lot of money in it. Sometimes,
Hmm.
like there is money in it, but it can be a little bit more like mysterious on how to get it.
Hmm.
And like you said, like we have to like focus on the other stuff because those are like more priorities for us. We don't have as much generational wealth.
Yep.
So those are all good points, and I think reasons why at first I wasn't gonna get into open source. Like I remember being like, I already code and I make money, so I'm not
Hmm.
gonna just sit here and spend my time coding for free. Awesome. All right, so I have like short like wrap up questions that are not about open source really, but like just fun questions.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so what was the first programming language you ever learned?
First programming language. I'm going to date myself, but the first one I learned was QBasic. It was in high school, and I used it. It was part of a class I took in high school. Uh, but the fun part about it was I got to learn how to code in that class, and what I ended up making was a basketball game, to
Oh,
where it was just like a rim that kind of went up and down the screen, and then you hit a button, and then the person, the player, would shoot the ball at some particular arc and try to see if the, like I said, the arc that you shot the ball at would go in the rim. So that was probably my first like structured
wow.
way into code. But I had always been around computers as a kid and build and tinker with them and things like that. So, but as far as coding wise, I was QBasic was my first language, and then kind of went on from there.
That's a cool game. I wish I was writing those kind of cool programs in high school. If money was an issue, how would you ideally spend your time?
How would I ideally spend my time? I would be doing open source. Like if I didn't, if I could, okay. Part of it would be doing open source, and I really like making content about open source projects. So I would spend my time doing like a mix of those two things. If we're still like talking about like tech, being in tech and doing that sort of thing. If I'm not in tech, it would probably be something around basketball,
Nice.
just because I love basketball. But definitely in tech field, I would still be doing open source and creating content and things like that. I'd just be doing that in a more, I guess, official capacity.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I actually, so far when I've asked that question, which has only been this month, everybody said they still do open source. So I love
Yep.
that y'all are passionate about it.
Yep.
Um, what is a dream open source project that you would create? Is it analog? Did you already create it, or is there one that's in the back?
um, Analog, I would say analog is probably the closest thing to it. Of the projects that I've created before and worked on like NgRx and analog, it's been analog is probably the closest one to it. So it's the perfect one for now, I would say. Until I come up with something else to build, I would say this is the one for now.
This is the dream one for now. One
Yeah.
person asked a really good question, and how many years have you been in the tech space?
Yeah. So professionally, I have been in tech for it is what year 16 for me.
Oh,
So yeah, I went through college and went through college. I went through community college. I went through bachelor's and got a master's degree, MBA also.
you have a
But I've
master's. Oh,
also yeah, I've also stayed in the tech space, but also always been in software development. So yeah, this is year 16 for me in tech.
wow, educated. Um, if you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
This is a tough one. I'm gonna go with cheeseburgers.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
cheeseburgers. If I have to eat one thing, it's gonna be cheeseburgers. But a close second would be like pizza. But
Ooh,
I'm gonna go with cheeseburgers.
yeah. And I think, cheeseburgers have all the food groups. You got meat,
Mm-hmm.
vegetables, dairy, bread.
Yep. A little bit of everything. If I don't want to eat something part of it that day, I just pick that part off and eat the rest. So I think it could work out.
I think so too. All right. How do you pronounce the word GIF?
I say GIF.
Okay.
Yes.
Most people do. I'd be saying Jeff, but don't hate me.
No, it's completely fine. I say whatever. I sprinkle in a little bit of both, depending on who I'm talking to. So if you say GIF, I say GIF. You say GIF, I say GIF. I like.
Nice.
It's not that big of a thing to me. So let's say however you wish. It works for me.
All right. And the last question is, what's your favorite Beyonce song?
Oh man, this is a rough one. I don't have a favorite Beyonce song. I listen to whatever Beyonce plays on the radio and when I hear it in commercials,
Yeah.
and those things. But I don't know that I have a favorite one of all time. So you'll have to ask Brian Douglas, B Dougie, about that one. He's the Beyonce advocate. So I don't have a favorite one to say there.
He inspired this question. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's always asking Beyonce stuff, so I'm gonna add that in.
Yep.
Um,
Whenever somebody says Beyonce, I say I think of Brian B. Duggan and that whole thing.
all right. Last thing is, where should people follow you or find you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Brandon T. Roberts. There, most places I'm Brandon T. Roberts. Brandon T. Roberts on Twitter, Brandon T. Roberts on like LinkedIn, Brandon T. Roberts on Twitch. If you follow me on YouTube, I create videos there also about Angular. Big surprise. But I'm Brandon Roberts Dev on Twitter. Oh, not on Twitter, on YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, so and Brandon Roberts on GitHub also. So it's a little variation between places. But if you like look up Brandon Roberts Dev on like Google or something like that, most likely I'm going to show up there. So Brandon T. Roberts in most places, Brandon Roberts developer, you'll be able to find
Developers?
me.
Is it like
Yes.
that? Okay,
Yep.
cool. I don't remember how the handles go on YouTube now, but
Yeah, yeah, those are pretty new. So yeah, I do live streams on Thursdays on the YouTube channel. So definitely check those out too.
awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Brandon. And also thank you to the chat. Y'all were really interactive and really engaged. I appreciate like seeing your questions and messages every Friday. Go ahead and give Analog a star
Ah,
on
yes,
GitHub. Yeah,
that'd be
give
great.
it a yeah. And if you want to learn more, go ahead and check out the contributing guidelines. See if you can like open an issue or create a pull request or just use the project in general. That would be super helpful to him, I think. People are just saying, I guess they're saying bye. But thank you so much again, Brandon, for coming on. I learned a lot from you. Especially I didn't know anything about Angular, but you made it look very like easy to read.
Cool. Hey, if we came away with that, I'm satisfied with that. Angular has come a long way, so we definitely want to promote that too.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Bye y'all, and I will put on the little goodbye music. I'm always really awkward with this part, but thank you so much, y'all. Bye.